Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining our web event today, ERP Success Factors. I'm Steve, and I'll be the host. To review, or if you haven't seen this before, the way to ask questions on today's event is to use your GoToWebinar pane. If you open that up in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the questions pane. You can type your question there, and at the end of the session today, we'll read all of your questions and answer anything that you submit to us. I am very pleased to be joined by Terillium's president, Dave Woodworth, today. Dave has had extensive experience in implementing ERP projects, and he's going to be leading the ERP Success Factors discussion today. Just a quick note on Terillium, in case you haven't seen this before in our previous sessions. We are ERP implementation experts. We specialize in a few different products, which we've highlighted in demonstrations over the course of this week. I hope you were able to check those out, and if you haven't, see the recordings that you'll have access to after today. These ERP projects can carry risk, which Dave will talk about today, but Terillium is very proud to have won many awards for our ERP implementations. Our mantra is that we're only as good as our last reference. We place a high premium on customer success, and we believe that success stems from our ability to deliver value to our customers, and we recognize all of our excellent consultants for their ability to deliver those award-winning services. We have about 170 full-time consultants that work directly for us in the United States. We do cover the full breadth of the United States, as well as have the ability to implement globally. We're headquartered in Cincinnati, but again, our consultants live across the U.S., so we have projects all across the United States. We started this series because not just the project of implementing ERP, but the process of selecting the right ERP system can be a daunting one. So we thought this would be a good way to get that process started by showing you a few different products, talking to you about some thought leadership ideas. For example, our first session, we had Jeff Carr, the president of Ultra, talk you through tips for selecting the right ERP system. Our vice president, Chris Garrity, shared the differences between cloud and on-premise ERP systems. And now, of course, Dave's going to join us to tell us more about how we keep these projects successful. So this is the last session of the series. So thank you all who have joined us all week here. And now I'll pass it over to Dave. Dave can talk a little bit more about his background, but essentially he's had many years of experience participating in or leading hundreds of ERP implementations. He's seen the good and the bad of these projects, and he produced this presentation to help companies like you who are thinking about a new ERP project so that you can understand what you can do to make sure that you have a successful project. So Dave, thanks very much for taking the time to join us today. I know this is an important topic to anyone considering one of these projects, and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Good afternoon to everyone on the call. As Steve said, I've been involved with well over 100 ERP projects. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've been with Terillium for 15 years, and probably about 10 years ago, I developed this presentation, and I continue to refine it and add to it. Today's session is a subset of a presentation that I give to clients and prospects. I even give this presentation on college campuses where they actually have ERP classes, and they have me come in and just talk to the students about ERP projects and what are some risks with those projects. So I've delivered this presentation quite a bit, and I took a subset of our deck just to share some of the things that we've seen over the years that can make a project go sideways, or if you have a lot of these things, it should hopefully make for a very successful project. So we use these success factors as we go into a project to make sure it's set up properly. And I like to preface that while I'm going to go through a number of different factors, I will say one individual factor doesn't mean the project's going to fail. But these are things that you definitely should keep in mind as you're setting up a project. And quite honestly, it doesn't matter what ERP platform you're going to go with. These are agnostic to any one package. So with that, I'll get started. The first thing that I do is I group these success factors into three broad categories: technology, people, and process. So we'll break down each of these into more detailed success factors. So if we get into the technology, the first thing that I like to tell people is your ERP software is just a business tool. It's not going to cause failure by itself, and it's not going to ensure success. Many of the software packages that you've looked at this week have been implemented in thousands of different companies around the world. And as I've told many of my clients is, the software companies are not writing these things to fail. So a lot of times you'll hear horror stories of a project that went bad, but you'll hear that, oh, it's the software's fault. Well, I can tell you in my 25 plus years, I've not necessarily seen that it's the software's fault. Yeah, there might be very specific requirements that a software package can't do, but in general, it's not the software's fault. Another thing with technology, and a lot of companies don't think about this, and at Terillium, we preach this before we even get the project started, is that companies really should look at and think about data conversions, integrations, and reports. And I focus primarily on data conversions. Data conversions is obviously bringing your data from your legacy system into the new ERP. And there's many tables and pieces of data that have to transform from your legacy to the new. And I can tell you that a lot of projects don't get started day one. They wait till month 3 or 4, and all of a sudden their timeline is going to get pushed out. You're probably going to see additional cost. This is probably the largest task in the entire ERP project is around data conversions. If you just think about the volume of data, the number of tables, and quite honestly, many of our clients' data is not very good. They will have data that needs cleansed. Terillium doesn't know our client's data, so we need the client to take a very active role in this task. I give one example of, we had a client that said, oh no, our data's clean, everything's fine, everything will work. And I said, okay. And we get into it early, and we asked for their customer master. And they gave us a spreadsheet of their customer master. And as we kind of started going through it, there were a number of missing data that our system needed to run, yet their legacy system didn't. So they had to manually populate things, and that takes time and effort. The other thing was, as we looked at the customer master, is we saw that Walmart showed up 35 different times in their customer master. And it wasn't because there were 35 different ship tos. It was actually the same Walmart. It just over 35 years with their legacy system and many different people entering customer masters, they had entered it 35 times. And it was quite honestly hard to tell which one was the quote unquote real Walmart. And they had different spellings and so forth. And many of them had activity over the prior 2 years. That's just one example. I have dozens of examples of where data can really bite you. And so I encourage you to really get started before the project gets going. Cleansing the data is a big activity. The other thing is with reports, I will say that while we don't write reports usually week one, it's nice to get all your reports gathered before we start, because that will help us define the requirements that we need to set up the software. If you're waiting until month 3, we're going to have to go back and reconfigure things once we identify new requirements, because we just found a new report. So those are a couple of things with technology that I wanted to share today. The biggest piece of any ERP project comes with the second category, and that's people. These projects don't implement themselves. Obviously, the amount of effort from the consultant as well as the client is very large. We typically see a 1.5 to 2 times the level of effort from our clients as it is for the consultants. And so there's a large team, and many of these team members are from different departments. They don't necessarily work together on a daily basis, and this ERP project is bringing people together. And so I'd like to share a couple things that are best practices when you're setting up a team for an ERP project. Again, none of these by themselves is going to cause failure, but I think these are really some best practice ideas. The first thing that I'd like to share is that ERP systems are really business systems. They're not custom developed systems by your IT department. They are business systems. So this project really should be owned by the business. And the IT area should be a supporting role on the project, a very big role, but a supporting role. And we don't always see this. Many times it's labeled an IT project and it's led by the IT people. But what we really try and push our clients is that it's a business system. When you're transacting in an ERP system, rarely do you see the IT department entering sales orders or entering purchase orders or processing accounts payable. Those are business people that are doing that. So you really need to have the project be owned by the business. The goal of the project from a client standpoint should be, we need to create internal experts. We know the software, you know your business, and we have to marry those two pieces of information together and transfer as much knowledge of the software from us to you guys. So it really should be a goal that you create these experts so you're not reliant on the consultants, long after the go live. You really want to become self-sufficient. The project sponsor, every ERP project needs to have someone that owns the project and can make the final call on difficult issues or questions. And we like to say that the sponsor should be a business executive. I've got several projects going on right now. The CFO is the project sponsor on one of them. Another one is actually the president. But typically an executive that is in the business, but has power to make decisions, because this is kind of the person that will make the tough calls when we come across any specific issues. The project will also have project managers. Obviously, the consulting firm will have a project manager, but we also need the client to have a project manager. As you know, the people at the client that participate on the project don't report to the consultants. We have no authority over your people. So we need to have the client have someone that can kind of oversee the internal client project team members. This one I don't see happen very often. Many times the project manager is someone from the IT department, but we push that it should be someone from the business. Again, back to the point that, this is a business system. I've had several projects where the client did a dual PM, someone from IT as well as someone from the business, and that worked out fine. But the project manager should be almost fully dedicated to the project. They've got to be respected because now they're crossing many boundaries and many departments that they probably have no authority of. A lot of times we'll encourage our clients to say, for this project, have the team members from the client report to the project manager so that they can actually get things done. Because one of the things we see happen is that the team members from the client, if they don't like the project manager from the client or they don't like what they're telling them to do, they'll just go run back to their department VP and say, hey, Mary, the project manager, is making us do this, and I don't think it's right. And now Mary is getting trumped by a vice president, and now we got the situation that things start unraveling. So those are some things that we see with the project manager. In terms of the project, we encourage that the executive team at the client not only form a steering committee and meet at least monthly to review the status, progress, and any issues of the project, but stay involved. I've had projects where they've signed the software agreement and our consulting agreement. We show up on site and we never see an executive. And I can tell you those projects typically go sideways at times because there's no executive involvement. Are they sitting there on the keyboard entering stuff for the project? No, but they may come in for key meetings. When we're doing an integrated testing session, they may buy lunch for the team and come in and check, hey, how's it going? There's going to be issues that pop up on these projects, and there will be many of them. We need the executives to stay involved and help resolve those issues. The core team members, typically on a project, this is just typical. It's not an exact science, but, we'll see anywhere between 3 and 6 consultants participate on the project. And, if you go back to what I said very early on in terms of the time commitment from the client versus consultants of 1.5 to 2 times the consultants, we typically can see anywhere between 6 and 12 client members participating. It's not a full-time effort. I have had clients provide us dedicated team members, but that is few and far between. But the key is that the core team members are going to be working with the consultants on a daily basis, implementing the ERP solution, and then ultimately delivering that solution to the rest of your organization. So it is important that we get adequate time commitment. Implementing ERP from a client standpoint is not a 1-hour-a-week job. I like to see anywhere between 30 and 50% of the time. And if that means we need to get multiple people to spend 25% because you can't give them up, that's fine. We can make that work. But the point is, this isn't a 1-hour-a-week project. The core team members from the client should be people you can't afford to lose. I've not had many clients of ours say, hey, Dave, can you give us a consulting team that's not your A players, but maybe your second team player? I never get asked that question. Well, we need the same thing from the client. We need the people that you can't afford to lose. They have all the knowledge. Your team members should understand the business, trusted, respected. They should be able to make decisions. They should be drivers of change and be willing to think outside of the box. I'll give you a couple examples of what I've seen around core teams. I had a client tell me, Dave, I got your presentation on success factors, and he gave me 7, the CEO gave me 7 100% dedicated core team members to our project. And he even took it one step further and rented office space about a mile from their facility so they would not get bothered and pulled back into their day job. I said, wow, I've never seen that. And we started the project, and we got to about month 4, and I started hearing rumors. And what ended up happening, thankfully this doesn't happen often, but I use this as an example, is what I found out is these 7 team members that were fully dedicated, the Friday before our project started, they were getting laid off from the company. And the CEO stopped them and said, well, wait a minute, we got to put people on this ERP project. Let's take those 7 we were going to let go, and they can be the ERP core team. Well, they weren't respected, trusted, and couldn't make decisions. And that caused the project to go longer than expected because we had to go back and get approval on almost every decision that was made during those first 4 months. So it is important that you consider these points when you're picking your core team. These core team members have to work together as a team, and there are compromises. And that's important that they try and get along. One of the things I've noticed is that our clients don't always get along with each other between departments. And that can cause issues on projects. I've seen core team members trying to set up other people so they fail. Well, that's only going to hurt the whole project and the whole company, and we really can't afford for that to happen. These core team members are going to be doing very detailed activities, so they have to be able to jump into the details. I had a project where the client gave me a core team, and every one of the core team members was a vice president. And I said, well, you're doing good because they know the business, they can make decisions. The problem is they never even had a log on to their legacy system. So they don't enter sales orders. They don't enter work orders. So they weren't going to do it with the new software. So the client ultimately had to bring in the next level beneath the VPs to supplement, and we used the vice presidents to help drive decisions in the first few months of the project, but at the next level did all of the hard work in setting up the software with us. As I said, these team members have to get along. There's a lot of give and take. As you can imagine, ERP systems are highly integrated. If you do one thing or set up the system one way, it's going to impact people downstream. So you can't make decisions in a vacuum. You must do things together. And as I said, it's going to affect everyone. And one of the things I tell clients, you have this legacy system. Maybe you've had it for 30 years and you've customized it. In fact, we have many clients that they've customized their system for each department, for each user, so they get exactly what they want. Well, ERP packages are built on best practices that fit a number of different industries and companies. You don't want to start modifying the software so it looks exactly like your legacy system, because I would tell you, why would you get off of your old system then? Take advantage of a packaged software that the software company invests billions of dollars to keep the software up to date and make improvements. So you should do that. So that's a little bit about the people. If we talk about some of the processes you need to think about as you're going through an ERP project. First thing is a methodology. A methodology is basically how do you implement the software? What are the steps? And it's very important that when you're working with a consulting company or whomever's implementing the ERP with you, that there is a methodology that is formal and very structured. we have very detailed project plans that we build for our projects. It's extremely important that you build a project plan and you continuously update the project plan. I can't tell you how many times I've seen ERP projects build a project plan day one of the project and it never ever gets touched again. I don't know how you can implement a project of this magnitude and not keep this up to date on a daily, weekly basis. The methodology should be a list of tasks, have tools and templates that you can use to streamline the project. It should be flexible. Methodology is not going to fit every company. And so when we go into our clients, we try and make it flexible for them. We're not going to take things out that are going to cause risk to the project, but the client may say, hey, we want to take on this type of task on the project, which normally is a consulting task. We're fine with that, and we will help train the client in doing so. So you have to be flexible in how you go about it, but it's important that you have a formal methodology. One of the key things, obviously, in terms of going through an ERP project is training and training the client team. Like I said, we know the software, you don't. It's the goal of the project to build internal experts. And to do that, we have to provide training. And training is not a one-time event. It should happen all throughout the project. And this slide just shows you some of the specific times or types of training that are done throughout the project. So within the first month, our methodology has our consultants training the client core team on the software. They're not going to be experts after that training. It's usually about a 1 to 2 week effort of training, getting them through the basics of each of the modules. We may supplement that with some of the software supplied training as well. We go through what we call conference room pilots or CRPs. Those are integrated testing sessions. Our methodology says we should be doing at least 3 of those integrated sessions. They take anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks to do those end to end. Those end up being training sessions, if you will, even though we're not sitting in a classroom and doing the classroom type training, but you guys are sitting side by side with our consultants in a conference room running through test scenarios and test scripts and really trying to get the software to work the way you want it. We also do the end user training at the end of the project once we've gone through all of our testing sessions and we're ready to get ready for go live. We go through and roll out end user training to all the people that did not participate as part of the core team. But also, every week, you guys are working side by side. The core team members are working side by side with our team. And quite honestly, many of those sessions are training sessions. They are learning from our consultants on the software and how it works and what they need to do to firefight if they see an issue and so forth. We also have training tools that we use as part of the project to help build training materials. So you're not building everything from scratch. But training is a very large piece of any ERP project, as you might guess. Probably one of the biggest risk factors that everyone's heard about is kind of the change management. And it is, change management is one of those things that's hard to touch and feel, but I can tell you that people don't like to change. I had a client where we were implementing the new ERP, and the shipping clerk came in to get trained on how to do shipping out of the new software. Well, the shipping clerks in the legacy system didn't have to even get into the software. she would manually write down every shipment on a piece of paper, and at the end of the day, she would give it to accounting. Next day, accounting would come in and enter all of the shipments that took place the day before. You can guess, first of all, it's not timely. Inventory is not going to be accurate on a real-time basis. There's subject to error because she accidentally wrote down the wrong item number, wrong quantity, whatever it might be. So anytime you're using manual operations like that, you're prone to error. So anyways, we bring her in to train her, and as we did, we found out that this user had never, not only didn't use the legacy system, she had never used a mouse. So I had to spend about a week of time just training this person on how to use a mouse. And the long story to this was the shipping clerk quit 2 weeks before go live. And she was an older lady close to retirement, and she said, "I'm not changing, this isn't worth it." And she left, which, you know, did pose a gap for our client. Those are just, that's an example. I've had a client where they didn't like the color of the new screen. You know, some of you may have green screens as your legacy system. Well, in these new software that you saw this week, there's not many that look green screen. And so I've had users say, well, we don't like this because it's not the green screen. Well, you can't change that. You're not going to change it. But people will put up roadblocks. But with change, some of the key things to overcome change issues is to communicate and talk about that change is good and that we want to change. But it's important to communicate to everyone. We hang up, we talk to the executives before the project starts, and we say, why are you doing this project? What do you want out of this project? What are the goals? And we post that up in the war room. And anytime we get someone that is fighting, changing something, we'll walk over to the project goal board and we'll say, which goal does this fix? Or which goal are you trying to help by saying you're not going to change? And I can tell you, I've never had one come up with a good answer. So if you publish the goals so that everyone knows why they're doing this. Back in the 90s when, you know, we were doing ERP, a lot of companies did it and said, you know, we can do this so we can get rid of some headcount and labor cost. That doesn't happen much in today's world. I can't tell you the last client that said that was their goal. So many people, though, at your companies have heard horror stories about ERP and what does that mean in terms of layoffs or losing their job or whatever. So what I tell our executives at our clients is if there no intentions of doing it, then tell everyone that. Say this, we're trying to make everyone better and make the company better. We're not here to reduce labor cost. Throughout the project, you know, we get so tied up into the details of the project and we're, you know, uncovering issues and doing testing and doing the data conversions. We sometimes forget to give updates. And when I say updates, not just to the core team members, but to everybody in the organization. I have a client right now that has 12 plants, 12 different locations, and those 12 have 6 different ERP systems. And the client is implementing one ERP, the J.D. Edwards product that you may have seen earlier this week, and they're going to replace all the 6 legacy ERP with that. But they decided they wanted to do it one plant at a time. Well, you can imagine if you're doing it one plant at a time, plant number 12 isn't going to see this new system for a while and has no idea what's going on. They may only hear, you know, things at the water cooler that someone heard from someone else that works at plant 2. Well, it's important to communicate to everyone and celebrate the successes and the wins. So this client that has 12 plants, they're sending out monthly newsletters about the project. And when there's a key event or obviously a key go live, they're celebrating it. They come out, we have a little party, we take pictures, we send the pictures to everyone around the company. So it is important. One of the things with ERP projects is what I call analysis paralysis. It is so easy to get into these projects and spend weeks and weeks and weeks talking about the same issue and not making a decision and moving forward. So I go to our executives and our clients and I said, you did not build your 35-year-old custom system in one day. You did not build your 35-year-old custom system in 6 months or 1 year. And every single one of them told me, you're right. In fact, we are still to this day customizing our system because new requirements, a new customer requirement has come out. So what I encourage them to keep the project on budget and on time, make a decision, get it implemented, make changes and improvements after. It's not like you're stuck. And what I typically see, though, is the core team members don't get that message, and they want to sit and battle and argue over a decision literally over months. And that is, I can tell you, one of the quickest ways that projects go over budget and way past their timeline. The other thing that I think is important is when I hear someone say our ERP project was a failure. Okay, why? Did you have specific metrics besides it was over budget? What metrics are leading you to say it was a failure? So one of the things we do is we actually set up key performance indicators for the project, as well as key performance indicators that the client is expecting out of this project, hopefully within 6 months after go live. We're not going to get it day one of go live, but we measure it, 6 months after go live. And we measure the project measures on a weekly basis and kind of put it on a dashboard and say, how are we doing? And so we can't get to the end of the project and they say, this was a failure. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let me pull out the dashboard over the last 6 months and looks like, yep, green, 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 yellow, green. And so it's a tool that everyone can agree to and that hopefully everyone has their eye on the ball. So it's important to measure your project and what you're trying to get out of the new system. So with that, Steve, that's the success factors that I wanted to go through today. I can turn it back to you and see if there's any questions that I can answer.
All right. Well, nice job, Dave. Thanks very much for sharing all of that with us. I do see a question here, so I'll just, as we read and answer this, I'll remind everybody, if you have any questions for Dave, go ahead and type that question into your GoToWebinar pane and hit send, and we'll answer whatever you submit for us here. So number one here, Dave, says, we're staffed very lean and don't have a whole team to devote to ERP. How much time is required of the core team?
Very common. Many of our clients are lean and can't afford to dedicate a team, which we don't expect anyways. I had mentioned on the call that the ideal breakdown would be somewhere between 30 and 50%. What I have seen done is the client will ask if the timeline can be extended so that the core team doesn't have to spend 50%, but maybe it's 25%, but we need to extend the timeline out, or they give us two people that can spend 20% each to give us a total of 40%. So there are things that we can do to try and make that happen, but I can tell you 90% of our clients have the exact same issue. They're lean.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. Well, as I talk here, if anyone has another question, go ahead and submit that. If I see it, I'll be happy to answer it. If we happen to close here and don't get to it, submit it still, and we'll be happy to follow up with you one-on-one. But with that, Dave, I want to thank you for taking the time today to share your experiences with the success and failure indicators for ERP projects. Very valuable. Hope that was valuable for the audience. Thank you all for attending today and in our other sessions this week. We'll follow up with each of you to see if there's anything else that we might be able to do for you, but I hope this was a valuable use of your time, and I thank you very much.